looking at, some of the comments coming in here and people saying we need our nurses back to work. Governor, please intervene, end the lockout. You don't have that authority, to be clear. I
Right.
mean, just so that people understand that you can't actually do that.
Yes.
What do you think of taking that kind of a severe action on behalf of Hawaii Pacific Health? I mean, that is a pretty severe route to take.
Yeah, Hawaii Pacific Health, I believe, did that because of the second strike, and they had to bring in people for at least like 5 days. And, people negotiate harshly, both sides. I would say that's pretty harsh. It's also harsh to call the leadership at Hawaii Pacific Health some pretty harsh or almost racist names. I mean, that's been going on behind the scenes with letters and things. It's bad on both sides. Most nurses love the administration. The administration loves most nurses. I'm sure of that. I can't break in because it would be abused very quickly by other governors, potentially. And if I were in kind of investing political energy like that, which, like I said, I'm apologizing, but I'm literally not allowed to do it, you would see people always playing favorites in different industries. It would be basically what it would do is it would negate the value of negotiations and collective bargaining completely. If any governor could just come and put their finger on the scale, so you just can't do it. I hope that they will both de-escalate. I think that some of the harsh treatment that the nurses have felt should be addressed. That we should be very sensitive about that. I know some felt very impugned in the past couple years, and I also think it's not helpful to call your family bad words and bad names, because that just creates terrible feelings going forward. These are people that are going to work together and are still going to run a great hospital. Whether it takes 5 to 10 days or 2 months, that remains to be seen. I really don't want to see the nurses off work for very long, because that will affect their lives. It'll affect their ability to pay for their rents. It'll affect our economy. It'll affect, the worst thing it could affect was possibly our access to care, although I do think they have people filling in now. They do. All of these things are very real for we as just citizens of the state. But hopefully negotiations get done, and then they don't have to do them for a long time. The reason this is a big deal is because all of the other hospitals are going to also have to negotiate with their nurses in the coming months. And it would be better just to set a baseline, figure this thing out. I think nurses should be at the top or amongst the top paid professionals in a state because of the work they do. And that is already playing out. So I'm a fan of the nurses, but I have some limitations on where I can intervene.